Good morning, everyone, to the green stage for our Worldcafe, where we will explore some pretty interesting concepts. Keeping an eye on the trends that are going to impact the future of healthcare. Vice President for Research at Frost & Sullivan, which is a market consulting firm. This event is in collaboration with the Medica Health IT Forum, and when we jump into the actual Worldcafe, we will have two different sessions where we start with Megatrends and translate into connectivity and the role of the Internet of Medical Things. But what we're also doing is we have invited a couple of firms to actually talk about the solutions that they bring to the market in this connected ecosystem. The first firm is Aerotel Medical Systems, and I'd like to call upon Jonathan Galeno, who's head of international sales and marketing. So broadly, they provide a lot of solutions across telehealth and telecare, both in hospital and primary care. And you're going to participate in the Worldcafe discussions as well. So we'd love to hear about your solutions and the value proposition that you bring to the market.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, fine, okay. So good morning, everyone. As I was presented, I'm the International Sales Manager for Aerotel Medical Systems. We are an Israeli company, actually a 22-year-old company based in Tel Aviv. What we provide, as they said, it's a wide range of telecare and telemedicine solutions. I'm going to be presenting today one of our most, let's say, successful business models, which is ECG monitoring. So we started in the ECG monitoring industry around 18 years ago, and our goal for cardiac monitoring, remote cardiac monitoring, is basically as one of the telemedicine to reduce the cost and the time of the treatment, meaning the monitoring of the patient, both, as they said, in hospital, outside of the hospital, in the house, or wherever the patient can be located, in able to save lives of patients. What we provide, it's called remote patient monitoring solution for Heartline receiving station, and this is basically how it works. So we have a wide range of devices that they go from 1 lead, 5 leads, 8 leads, and 12 lead ECGs. They can be used for different scenarios. So 1 lead is basically a 1 lead for arrhythmia detections. You also have a HeartView 12L, which is for hospital use, for physicians use. Then you also have a HeartView P12-8i, which is the only medically grade and tested 12 lead ECG for home care that the patient can actually make a full 12 lead ECG at home. All of this data from these 3 devices is transmitted by Bluetooth to a mobile application that goes from a phone or for a tablet. The mobile application is synchronized with a server, and the server is installed in monitoring centers. I'll show you a couple of scenarios shortly in a video. I want to just show you how we implement this. And the last device that we have is basically mainly for home care, which is also the same technology of the P12-8i, but it's based on 3G transmission. So it has a SIM card inside. So once the patient collects the ECG, the device itself transmits the data from the device to the database of the monitoring center by 3G network. This is a little bit of how the mobile application works. So the mobile applications comes in a personal version and a professional version. This is the professional version, which is basically used by physicians and for clinical trials, and clinical use, I'm sorry. And all of this data from the devices, again, is collected by Bluetooth. There's 3 main functionalities. On the one hand, the ECG can be displayed on the screen. There's also online access to the database for the patient. You can receive the patient history. You can receive the patient medical data, the personal details. And you can also add patients directly from the mobile application to the database. This is the solution that we provide for home care. So you have, again, the devices for ECG monitoring, and we also have integrated third-party devices, blood pressure, thermometers, glucometers, pulse oximeters. Those are third-party devices. They're not our devices. Again, They're all connected digitally by Bluetooth to the mobile application. The patient directly transmits the data to the mobile application, the tablet or the phone, and this is synchronized directly with the database. And on the side of the doctors, the doctors and the physicians are getting the information on real time. This is basically one of the case studies you will see shortly of an Israeli company that is doing home care 12-lead ECG monitoring. The patient feels, it's an event recorder, the patient feels some symptoms, he records the ECG, transfers it to the monitoring center where there is nurses and specialists. They review the ECG in less than 10 minutes. They call up the patient, they tell him what should be done, what's the next step. If it's a false alarm, meaning nothing happens, the patient can remain at home. If it's an emergency, the company dispatches ambulances. And if it's not an emergency, then they schedule a physician's visit. Once the ambulance comes, they do another ECG check with one of our devices, and they decide again, the paramedics on the ambulance, either if the patient should be transferred to the hospital or remain at home. This is how the platform looks. This is basically what it's installed in the monitoring center. You have three main functionalities: patient database with all of the medical records of the patients and personal records of the patients. You have all of the display of the 12-lead ECGs, including automatic interpretation of the ECG, automatic measurements of the ECG, and you also have all of the reporting tools for the physicians to report and make the interpretation as quick as possible of the ECG tracing that is being collected from the different devices. We also offer a personalized web access to the database, so the physicians, the company, the interpreters, meaning the ECG interpreters, or the patients can access their own data by web. No need of any specialized software, directly by web access. This is some of the countries we are currently operate. We have a customer base in 51 countries around the world, and I'll show you next. This is some of the medical research we've done with our technology. And now I'll show you, because this is the most important thing, how our customers are actually changing life and saving lives around the world. So I'm going to show you some case studies of actual videos that I asked some of our customers to record for this session. So this one is first this company that is taking ECG health checkups for underprivileged population in Nicaragua, in Central America, and this is what they do. It's very, very short. The patient comes, the physician collect the 12-lead ECG from the patients. You can see the doctor then is seeing all of the ECG being collected by the patient on the monitoring station. Basically, they're based on the capital, and it's interpreting and giving the interpretation on real time, and they're giving all of the ECG checkups for massive 200, 300, 500 patients in Nicaragua and Central America. The next video, this is we're working with one of our customers is working with the army actually in Ecuador, and they are providing telehealth services for the army, for the armed forces. This is actually one of the videos. This is in the middle of the jungle. There's absolutely no connectivity. This is, now there's no sound, but he's actually saying, where is he located? There's no connectivity, there's no phone lines, there's no electricity because there's an shortage of the electricity and where they are. They're asking him the questions, and basically what they do is they collect the ECGs on the tablet or on the phone, you'll see shortly, and then the physicians, they collect it, and then once they reach a short, nearby area where there is connectivity, all of the stored data on the phones or the tablets gets transmitted, gets interpreted by the physicians on almost real time. This is one again. You can see the device over here. They're gonna make the ECG, 12-lead ECG checkup. You can see also there's a phone that is collecting by Bluetooth the ECG, and this is the collection of the ECG with the armed forces. The next case study, this is the Israeli company that I mentioned before. It's a healthcare company called Natali Healthcare. They actually have over 100,000 home care-based subscribers for 12-lead ECG monitoring at home. This is, one of their videos that they use for promotions. This is basically, one of, very important, famous guy, Israeli businessman that actually is one of the subscribers to this service, and every time that he feels any symptoms, he can check, he can collect his 12-lead ECG from the office, from the house, from wherever he is, and transfer it. In this case, they use acoustic transmission as well that they use to the monitoring center. This is another monitoring center happening in Russia. So in Russia, we actually have around 15 different monitoring centers that are using the technology. This is also for home care. You can see here the device. The patient is placing the device. It's collecting, again, the 12-lead ECG. Again, like in the company before, once the ECG is interpreted, they send a healthcare checkup. Again, the nurses or the physician come, make another checkup, and you can see here the doctor is receiving on his tablet, on real time, the ECG of the patient at home. Everything is trying to be in under that window of 2 hours to be able to give the immediate treatment for the patient. This is actually another company, another client of ours in Singapore. They're using, again, 12-lead ECG. What they do here, it's a kiosk, it's a health kiosk. So besides the 12-lead ECG that you here see based on a PC, you can also collect multiple other devices. Okay, this is, again, another of our companies. I'm just going to go quickly. This is, again, in China for Bluetooth transmission. We work there. Actually, we're partially owned by a Chinese company. This is another video happening in Brazil for ECG, again, checkups, as you can see here. For digital checkups, you can receive, the patient receives. And this is another project that we run in community hospitals in Uganda as well for ECG screening and ECG monitoring. You can see here the conditions that ECG monitoring is being had, and you see there as well the tablet collecting the ECGs, and then the remote physician giving the interpretation of the ECG.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks a lot for the interesting presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to our connectivity session at the Health IT Forum here in Düsseldorf 2017. I'm excited and proud to be able to present to you a new format of the Connectivity Industry Consortium. It's not only format, we as well have got an app. I will show you the information to the app later on. Well, for the first time, we actively invite you to participate in our session. We together will work on questions according the future of healthcare. And we create answers in the whole community with the creativity and the knowledge of the community, because there we can answer questions, complex questions and challenges much better than we stay just on our own. Well, welcome to the first Worldcafe on the Health IT Forum stage here at Medica. And allow me to give my thanks to Frost & Sullivan. Frost & Sullivan is powering this session and providing the app you can use for participate in our workshop. Thanks a lot to Sid and Danish. Thanks a lot. Well, Worldcafe, what does this mean? First of all, whoever wants to take a coffee, just get one of the cups here, and coffee is on the tables already. So it's a Worldcafe, and take your coffee and discuss with us. The Worldcafe, I hope you can hear me. Okay. The Worldcafe is a collaborative discussion, as I mentioned before, brings groups of people together to cross-pollinate ideas and enhance their capacity for creative and collaborative thinking. It includes 3 rounds, I explain it later on again, of conversation, each round addressing a different discussion prompt. And each table, as you can see already, is covered by paper, so you can put your ideas and your thoughts and your solutions on the paper. The close of each round means that people change table, not as a group, as individual. Because the idea behind is that you have always different kind of groups discussing the same questions and generating more knowledge to bring the whole topic ahead. Well, on the tables you will have hosts, table hosts. I will introduce to you just in a minute. This is only an overview of the idea of a Worldcafe, like a guideline. We use like guidelines. I really don't go through. For our today Worldcafe, we have got, as mentioned before, 3 rounds. We have got five tables at a time. We should be about 4 to 5 people at one desk to discuss the topic. And it lasts about 15 minutes, and then we change the tables. Our hosts, we have got 5 hosts. I would like to introduce to you. First of all, this is Dinesh Kumar. You will meet here. He is giving a speech, a keynote, in accordance to the topic Megatrends, and then we will discuss Megatrends. He is moderating table 1. Our second round is on IoT, which is moderated by Sid, and he will moderate table 2. I introduce to you as on table 3, Klaus Juffernbruch. He is professor for health and social science at FOM University of Applied Science for Economics and Management, and he serves since 2012 as chairman of the expert group on intelligent networks in healthcare for the German federal government Digital Summit. He is your table host at table 3. Well, I asked all the moderators to give a statement on Megatrend and IoT, and you will find it in this gray part on the slide here. Table 4 is moderated by Emil Alton. He is since last month CEO of Vita Services, belonging to the Vita Group, located in Mannheim. It's very well known by Vita Phone, actually, to all of us, I think. And he stayed before with Bertelsmann. At table 5, where is he? At table 5, there is Kurt Becker. He then 10 years is professor at IT management and healthcare at Apollon University of Health Management, and he's managing director and partner of Prevention Partners, and he advises companies in the field of illness prevention and occupational health management. So you know all our table hosts now: Dinesh, Sid, Klaus Juffernbruch, Emil Alton, Kurt Becker. Well, as mentioned before, we have got an app, and it's a bit difficult probably to get rid of it, but you find the instruction here, as well as the username and the password. So it's one option is to stay with us at the table, and the other one is that the audience uses the app to participate as well and answer questions who will be presented by the keynote speakers now. For the keynote speakers now, I give over to Dinesh, and he's going to give a keynote on IoT. Welcome to Dinesh.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome you all to the Worldcafe, powered by Frost & Sullivan. So my name is Dinesh. I work as an industry analyst with Frost & Sullivan, tracking connected health, that is digital health and healthcare IT kind of segment for Frost & Sullivan. So here in this presentation, we're going to look at the healthcare megatrends and the role of connectivity. So the entire presentation and the focus is basically how this connectivity is going to empower the patient care, through the exchange of data or getting the patients connected from in and out of the hospital, and how this connectivity is going to empower the doctors and the patients for establish an engaging to have a connectivity stuff over there. So can you go to the next slide, please? That's right. So what are megatrends? Megatrends are transformative and global forces that define the future with the reaching impact. I mean, it's basically how it's fine-tuning the existing, the infrastructure, and it's basically on the connectivity standpoint, we're going to look at into healthcare side. So you have a lot of things here. One is the connectivity and convergence. So it's going to be more about your 4G and 5G technology in the future that's going to take over the connectivity side. And for the health, wellness, and well-being, so we have right now the healthcare wearables, and you've just seen the presentation from Airtel that's based on the cardiac monitoring on the telehealth side. So there's a lot of new innovations and new kind of unique solutions are coming up in the market. So these are all powered by the connectivity side. So it's going to be the telemetry side of it or the data exchange and the future of mobility. So all the solution present, the digital health solution is centered around the mobile. That's going to be one of the powerful devices that's going to reshape the healthcare connectivity in the future. And we also have a cognitive era where a lot of machine learning and the deep learning concept are coming up. And for example, IBM Watson is one of the best example, and Google DeepMind is going to take over the healthcare clinical decision making. It's going to have a great impact on the doctor's side of it. And there's a new business model coming up, the urbanization. So these are all, it's all put together a mega trend which is going to be redefine the future of how we interact and how we take over the healthcare forever. So can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So this is just a kind of a forecast or just a kind of a thing that our world in 2015. So Europe will enter the cognitive era, looking at the thing that a lot of connectivity and advancements happening. So Europe region will enter into cognitive era. A lot of millennial leaders are taking place. So in autonomous cars, Europe will spark the first fintech revolution and high-speed rail. These are just as examples how this connectivity is empowering the entire the global level, having the data and transporting the new thing. So the robots will take over the home. The recently Sophia, which was given a citizenship of Saudi Arabia, is a big example that I can take it over here. So it's a lot of interesting stuff that's coming up. Yeah. So this is just a kind of the vision from Frost and Sullivan, how the world is going to be in 2025. So can I skip on the next stage? Yeah. So this is a pretty important slide. We're just trying to focus here. There's a 5G rollout in Europe, the roadmap and vision. So earlier we started with the 1G, 2G. So currently we're on the 3G and 4G side of it. So this is already revolution, how the digital health is actually revolutionizing all this technology. So it's basically the 5G is the 5G is going to be more about zero latency application, that is a vehicle to vehicle or a vehicle to infrastructure. This is going to power the IoT in healthcare. So for example, in healthcare, it's going to be like Internet of Medical Things. So how we are going to connect the devices? You have an hub right over there, and you're just going to connect with the mobile network using a GSM network. So these are all kind of, it's a kind of a mega trend that's actually reshaping the digital health and how the patients and the healthcare providers leverage these technologies to benefit the population. So the 5G is going to be one of the notable development that's going to happen here. So it's going to be the bandwidth of 1 Gbps. It's going to give you the bandwidth of 1 Gbps. So for healthcare, it's going to be a huge kind of transformation that we can rely on this technology. So including a digital health or a medical imaging or a pathology imaging, is going to be a real-time interaction with the doctors, a virtual reality in an operating room, in a hybrid operating room. The doctors from a different continent, the different countries will be able to interact and operate a surgeon with the help of, with a suggestion from each other. I mean, there's already a model that's happened already with 5 doctors sitting in India, South Africa, UK, US. They're actually interacting using a virtual reality. Another doctor is suggesting what to be done for the patient. So this is all going to be powered up huge to a great extent using the 5G technology. So yeah, can I have the next slide? So this is a subtrain that we are coming into: a connected health, a connected home, and a connected work. So in terms of healthcare, we are more on the connected home, like a home health stuff, which is centered around the patient and the mobile device or the tablets. And in the hospital, it can be on the clinical IT system and non-clinical IT systems, and how the data is being interoperable, how the devices are connecting the data into the central network, and how the doctors are utilizing the data for a clinical decision making. So this is going to have a huge impact in terms of patient and doctor collaboration and engagement, because right now there is a new concept coming up in hospital without even a bed. So there's a new concept that's popping up, and this is all going to be powered with the connected health, where the patient can be treated from the home. He need not be admitted in the hospital. So that's going to have a greater potential for the government to reduce in terms of hospital readmission stuff. It's going to have a clear-cut kind of a change over the practices that's going to happen. And you do have a mobile working, so you have a mobile device management solution where doctors are going to use that mobile as a kiosk inside the hospital premise. So that's going to give them a more space to collaborate with the hospital corporate and also the patients and exchange data. So, and then you have the enterprise social networking is going to take place, where there's a population health management can actually come in over here, patient risk stratification. So using this data, we can actually patient stratify the risk for the country level. For example, Germany, they'll be able to use patient stratification, stratify the patients with age 60, 65, and 70. They'll be able to roll out an integrated care perspective. The patient with chronic illnesses can be brought into a single fold. Start to the end-to-end solution can be provided. So these are all going to be powered up with the connected health. And the healthcare connectivity is going to be the catalyst behind all these developments. So can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah, one more. Health, wellness, and well-being. Great. So these are the key areas of healthcare technology innovation. So the key areas of digital health innovations are marked in orange color. So it's going to be this is going to be the revolutionize how the connectivity is going to reshape the healthcare. For example, you have brain and computer interfaces and your wearable devices. I see a lot of companies over here, the wearable devices powered by IoT, and the data is just getting transferred directly into the EMR and EHR. It's one of the first steps that we have taken forward as an IoT standpoint. And you have a surveillance tool, a robotic care, a medical tricorder, a project from Qualcomm, who's just trying to power up how a single devices can be used for multi-purpose in the home health side, ranging from a cardiac monitoring to even the blood sample reading. This one device is powered up with multi-purpose kind of thing, which is the tricorder project from Qualcomm. So they're trying to innovate this perspective. And you have population health analytics. Right now, the entire North America or Europe is focusing on consolidated healthcare records. So it means that patients, with EHRs available there, they'll be able to leverage those data and to come up with the population health analytics. As I told you, it's more about bringing the complete set of a population of a country into a single fold, and then you're going to stratify the risk and what is the patient gender and what kind of chronic illnesses they suffer and everything, and then you're going to shape up how the treatment can be delivered on a single paradigm. And you have gamification there. A lot of, I've just seen a company that's actually promoting games, to actually influence the patients to go ahead, or just to influence them to walk back again. So this is all powered by the gamification. And you have augmented and virtual reality. I just gave you a simple example. This is actually going to be useful for the doctors as well, to have a surgery, to get trained them in the surgery, or a virtual reality, how they're going to power up 5 doctors together to operate on a single patient. So this is going to be a kind of a platform where the multi-talents in the world are going to reunite and use this technology to give a treatment or a care for the patients. So can I go to the next slide? So this is the total hospital ID application. Let's just come to the reality, okay? So these are the applications currently we have in the hospital, at least for the largest segment of the hospital. So you have a clinical department, EMR, a risk packs into imaging, provider order entry, clinician provider order entry, which is a clinical decision support, and you have staff efficiency, hospital efficiency, bedside support. So at this point of time, these systems might be a departmental-based integration. But when you go in the future, like 3 to 4 years down the line, it's all going to be an enterprise integration. So you're going to have an enterprise content management going to come in, and VNA, vendor-neutral archive for the imaging, is going to come in. And the next phase is basically how the data from a single hospital can be shared across a multiple hospital in the same country or across a region, like a cross-border thing. From Germany, a patient coming from France will be able to see the data from Germany. So this is how the healthcare is actually transforming with the data sharing network. So this is the present reality of big data management, the platform for external marketing. So in the future, with all this connectivity stuff, it's all going to be consolidated into a single platform where a patient or a doctor can engage in a single platform and leverage those data for the better outcome. So can I go to the next slide? So, just a reality behind what exactly happening at this point of time. You have the patients connected with the existing EHR, connected devices, home health, and home health wearables, and you have all the data getting stored in a single server, but there is a lack of connectivity between this EHR, connected devices, home health, and wearables. So in the future, we are going to address this with standardization, with setting up with more about adhering to the clinical standards like a DICOM and HL7 messaging and everything. And that's going to be, at the present, there's no point of getting into a comprehensive patient health record. So doctor need to, again, go back to retrieve the data. There's a lack of complete set of patient data for doctors to come up with a clinical decision making. So obviously, this has to be addressed, and this can only be powered by companies like you, the OEMs, who's actually empowering the healthcare organizations with the right set of solutions for them to enable this interoperability using an open set of data and open APIs for them to exchange the data at this point of time. So if these things are being addressed, then this 5G and IoT technology is going to take a reshape into that, and how this data can help the doctors to have a longitudinal view of a patients to come up with a clinical decision making. So can we go to the next slide? So the healthcare connectivity, it enables a decentralization, because at this point of time, a lot of data is being decentralized, but it has to be decentralized. Currently, it's all centralized. It's just located with one of the healthcare organization. But in the future, once we have a fluidic data exchange, once the patient data is available elsewhere, it'll be like great to have an instant healthcare possible at any point of time. So I need not go rushing to my region or to my doctor to have a care. But if I'm traveling to any country in the US or to Asia Pac and anywhere, I'll be able to access the data. So that's where the healthcare has to go. The patient should be centered of the care, and the healthcare organization should focus with a patient-centric care. And you do have a continuous healthcare, error-free healthcare. When you have everything integrated, you don't have any kind of a manual data entry, which actually put forth quite a lot of time consuming for the nurses. And when you have all this integrated stuff happening, it's going to be an electronically capturing all the data, So that's going to reduce the manual errors. So it can be applied to various fields, even in the OR, with the smart OR, so the interoperative OR stuff. And you're going to have an emergency department powered up with connected devices and interconnectivity. And it's going to be a cost-effective healthcare. So when you have everything in one place, you need not go and repeat the imaging study or everything. So you just have a consolidated data, and you have an artificial intelligence or machine learning. You'll be able to come up with the clinical decision at the spot, and the patient benefits a lot. And it's again have a positive impact with the government. They're going to reduce the cost on that side. So can I have the next slide? So yeah, you can just go to the next slide. Just about the data sharing and everything. Yeah. So this is a connectivity roadmap. So currently, it's all powered by the EMR and EHR way. We're going to have a web-based and API-powered. Earlier it was like an on-premise-based stuff, like a client-based model. But right now, we are at the stage of a web-based and enabled clinical IT system. So EMR and EHR are becoming a cloud-based model where the scalability is going to be pretty easy for any health system to scale up and include any models. With a concept like a FHIR, FHIR, fast healthcare interoperability is taking up the healthcare field, you're going to have a more fluidic data, for data action and the stuff. And then you have innovations in connected medical devices. So we have seen one of the best examples is Aerotel. where they're trying to empower the telehealth and home health side of it. But what if the medical devices speak to each other in the operating theater, in the ICU? So that's basically a medical device connectivity in the hospital setting. So you're going to connect your patient monitors, your anesthesia machine, your smart infusion pump, everything into the patient's EMR, so you don't lose any data, okay? How the patient is experiencing, if there is any kind of illness the patient experiences. If you're going to use that, it's going to be no use for any of the healthcare industry. So when you have this device connectivity powered, every data sits on your EMR, and that data can be put into a clinical alarms. The clinical alarms, clinical decision support, it can be used. So the patient experiencing any form of a pain or something like that, there is a clinical alarm triggered, and the data goes into a smartwatch with the nurses and the doctors. So they get a trigger, and the emergency response team get the trigger that patient is feeling or suffering from a pain, and they'll be able to rush up to the spot. So the connectivity, this is what is powered by the connectivity. It's not only about the clinical ID system, but there are other aspects where it's centering the patient's care, and then the entire thing is getting powered up. And you have this digital health and data interoperability platform. For example, the patient goes out of the hospital, he has a wearable, he has a lot of devices connected to it. When you have an IoT platform, the data enters into a cloud, and then it can be integrated with any of his EMR and EHR, and the doctors will have a real-time dashboard. If a patient experiences a certain level of pain, and doctor will be able to call up a patient and say that your blood glucose level is high, and it's time for you to control your stuff. So this is how the real-time monitoring is powering up. And then you have a cloud computing and web enabling stuff. The most of healthcare right now, they're moving on to a complete cloud-based stuff, which is going to ramp up the European healthcare space. And then you have a big data analytics and machine learning. The machine learning is going to be one of the huge transformation where the healthcare IT can be seen together. So it's going to be the consolidated list of patient data, including a medical imaging, your telehealth, your home health data, and you're going to provide a clinical insight to the doctors for enable them to a better clinical decision making. So this is going to be the healthcare connectivity roadmap, at least for the next 5 years. It can be for the Western Europe, for North America. This is how that we feel. So every aspects of the healthcare devices, from the clinical ID systems, everything comes into this point of roadmap. So can we go to the next slide? So next slide, please. Next slide. So the healthcare connectivity is actually transforming. The thing that we have already discussed here, you're going to have an inpatient health solution from a primary care, healthy living, prevention, everything coming onto a single platform, all right? So this is where the patient-centric care has to happen. So if this comes, you have a healthcare decentralization happen with really a very real-time stuff, and you have the screening and diagnostic and everything, and then it enables the health system to harness the patient data, followed by engage the patient in the right perspective. If the patient has a multiple chronic diseases, it has to come into an integrated care where the patient has treated for the diabetes and he has a treatment for the cancer. So if that's there, the patient need not go across to the various locations, but the health system can actually monitor the patient, taking him to the right path with the right set of clinical doctors and everything, and it benefits the patients a lot. And then you're going to have connected devices. So you're going to set up the set of devices at the home, and they're going to monitor in real time. So this is how the connectivity is actually shaping up. So next slide, please. Next slide. So just a simple example that we have seen here. Right now, we have wearable defibrillators being kept as a wearable that you can actually wear it on time. You have a wrist-on pulse oximeter, and you have a health heart monitor. We just seen a demo from Aerotel, and this is glucose Dexcom. So currently, these are the set of the latest advanced devices that's available, which is actually on a path towards healthcare IoT, or the wearable devices is powering up the healthcare segment. But soon, this is going to revolutionize. There are a lot more devices going to come in. It's going to be a vital part of a day-to-day life for the human being. So it can be from a multi-perspective, like a pregnancy woman getting monitored through a wearable device. Yes, it's possible. I just seen an example of a company which is doing that. And there are a lot more things are going to come up in this segment. So it's just a basic representation how the industry is shaping up here. So can you go to the next slide? So this is the perspective of device connectivity from the hospital standpoint. Okay. So you have EMR and alert, clinical alarm and alert server, a clinical data warehouse, and health information exchange, and you have a set of devices here. Okay, the mobile workstation, data analysis, connected hospital, real-time location system, which is for the hospital devices, real-time location system. So just imagine a connected hospital, how benefits they can have, ranging from a doctors to a clinical personnel to a patients. When they have everything connected together, it becomes a reality for a real-time monitoring for the patients. So that gives up a new thing for the virtual ICU. where a single hospital with 60 to 80 bed can just manage with like 4 to 5 nurses around, because the patients are connected to the device, and the device is going to take care of the clinical alarm and triggering the right proper doctor with a smartwatch connected to it, with a mobile connected to it. So that's going to reduce the workforce, the clinical workforce, and it lets the doctors focus on the specific patient who's expressing the illness, who's experiencing certain kind of discomfort in his way of being admitted in the hospital. So this can also be replicated into home health. It's not very difficult for us to shift this entire set of virtual IC solutions to home health monitoring. So this is definitely one kind of segment that's powering up, the hospital as well as the connected home. So can I go to the next slide? And here, the mobile solutions, the convergence of mobile solutions in the digital health, this is one of the key aspects. How a smartphone, just imagine 5 to 10 years back, this is really not possible how it's going to be. But right now, mobile is at the center stage. This is actually bridging the gap between the healthcare providers and the patients. You have a lot of things happening in the mobile, and sometimes we just miss it. Oh, this is what it is. And you have a lot of things to put it in fourth year. So you have a clinical health records. The doctors can view the patient's clinical records on the go. And right now, the packs are becoming like a web-based packs, like a web-based DICOM viewer with a HTML5 front-end, which just works like a Facebook and a YouTube, that you'll be able to view the patient's CT or MR, on a phone with on the Apple iPhone or Android stuff. It is going to view that on your browser. So it works on the zero footprint viewing. Just imagine, is it possible in the 10 years back to doctors to view on the go the phone? So the connectivity is actually empowering both the patient and the doctors to have right setting. And you have home health and telehealth. In fact, all the devices over here, it's all powered by the mobile solutions. So this is one of the important aspects that we need to look, because the phones are getting smarter and smarter. It means that it is capable of leveraging this healthcare side of it to have more potential in developing and delivering the care. So can I go to the next slide? Sorry? Oh, yeah, sure, I'm just completing it. So this is the last slide, I'm just going to complete this. This is going to be the kind of the landscape, how the thing is going. So connectly, it is healthcare digitization. The entire focus of across the globe, it's going to be on the healthcare digitization. They want to implement electronic medical records, electronic health records. So it's basically on the digitization of care. And then you're going to bring in the e-prescription and e-dispensing side of it. And that goes into enterprise integration. So the hospitals, all the systems, currently it's under departmental side of it, but in the future, it's going to be an enterprise-level integration, and followed by a smart hospital. So once you get into a mode of enterprise integration, that lets you more into an EMR, EHR, clinical decision, virtual ICU. That's, again, gives a focus onto a smart hospital solution. So this is where you have a cloud-based platform, a hyper-converged, powerful cloud solution where you're going to, it's a very scalable platform that you're going to implement AI, your dynamic learning for optimal care delivery, cognitive intelligence tool. So this is where the world is heading, and I hope that maybe another 3 to 4 years of medical solution, we're going to have this as a reality here. So I expect that to happen, and the OEMs and the healthcare ID solutions provider are powerful enough and capable to give the solutions to the world out there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we start with presentations on the solutions of the tables, and I think, Dinesh, table 1.
Hi all, this is Dinesh here once again. So we definitely had a great interaction, and quite a lot of unique conversation with everyone over here on the table that they shared with me. So what exactly is that? Just the gist of the conversation that we had. The first thing is actually the blend of telehealth and connected devices. This is actually going to reshape how the patient engagement is going to take shape. The interoperability is one of the key aspects that's going to enable this telehealth and connected devices. So these are the two technologies that's going to reshape the future of healthcare. At least this can be one of the significant driver for the next 4 to 5 years across the globe. So the blend of telehealth is basically connected devices, and your the virtual ICU or tele-ICU solutions is going to take shape. And the second thing is the end-to-end healthcare digitization. That's the one thing that every of the experts out here, they put forth this. The digitization is the key to success of the connected health. It's basically, you need to have, from the beginning, the patient interaction from the front desk to HIS, hospital information system, to your EMR, to EHR or laboratory, and you go out of the hospital, the telehealth care. So everything has to be integrated, and the blockchain can actually power up the entire the workflow out of it. It gives you data protection because it's going to decentralize the data that's going to store. The blockchain is going to be one of the powerful because it's going to decentralize, because no one actually owns the data. It's going to stay in the block, and it's going to give you a highest level of cyber security over there. So I think the blockchain is one of the key technologies that's going to it's going to power up or ramp up the healthcare initiative in the future. And the third thing is cybersecurity and the patient data protection. Over here, we have seen a lot of ransomware attacks on healthcare organizations. That's the one thing which is actually impeding the healthcare hospitals or the health system to adopt to a cloud computing environment. So I think the cybersecurity is one of the key things that need to be addressed. So they need to come up with the proper encryption standards, and that's going to be really a safe environment. So again, I would just say that I think the blockchain can actually address this challenge. Maybe I just put the question forth to you, so that so we feel that the cybersecurity is one of the things that blockchain can able to address, and the patient data protection, because one of the major thing that's shared over here, the patient need to have the ownership of the data. I just give a simple example. A patient from Germany is relocating to Sweden or relocating to Australia, and all the patient's health data is in Germany. So it's actually the data belongs to the patient. So what exactly it does is that patient needs to have his data. So it means that every patient has to have his digital health registered under him, and all the hospital, instead of sharing it to a common repository or a health information exchange, the data has to go to the patient. So if the patient goes to Australia or to North America, he has the right to just push the data to the healthcare provider that he visits. And he wishes that this is the segment of doctors that I would like to go, so I'm sharing my data with this doctor. So that level of confidence and the kind of platform that health system has to devise in the future to have this connected health, the full framework of connected health has to be focused on the patient-centric care, so that the patient owns the data and not the health system. Just because the patient visits the hospital and it's their modality that they are taking the data, it doesn't mean that the data belongs to the hospital. It has to belong to the patient. So that's a strong point kept forth by the experts that I discussed with. That's a unique thing. Appreciate for that. And incentivizing provider. Incentivizing provider is a really good thing, because the health system or the government should take up the healthcare. Okay, because you see a lot of defragmentation or adoption. For example, North America is very much advanced in terms of health ID. When it comes to Europe, the Western Europe is very much advanced in compared to Central and the Eastern Europe. And APAC, there are only like 4 to 5 countries are very much advanced. For example, Japan, Singapore, to an extent, and Australia. It's all because of the providers not incentivizing. So why, if the provider wants to invest in blockchain or a medical device connectivity, when he's not having any kind of a positive outcome of it? So he can just go with the traditional flow. So the government should take up the initiative and force the hospital, to have this proper set of solutions for him to power up, to gear up the future. Because every hospital has to be in the same fold to just scale up and adopt to a new technologies that's coming up. So, and the second thing is the data ownership we already discussed. Is going to be a common cloud here. So all the data from a hospital or a home or a work or a general physician or a smart city, it just goes into a common cloud, and this data belongs to the patient. And this is how we ended up a conversation. I hope that it really gives a greater perspective of how the healthcare digitalization should go for the next 4 to 5 years. So thank you very much, and if you have any queries, then I'll be happy to address it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. I would like to ask if there are any comments on this statement. I know there's one, just a minute, because he's going to leave. May I just ask you for your comment?
Hi. You were speaking about the data belong to patient, and I have a small comment. In Germany, data security is very important. I'm a data security inspector. I took this course, and in the hospitals, it's very, very important. The technology is on one side. On the other side, you have to take care of the private things of the patients. There is a law, data security law, and this has to be combined with the technology what you are proposing to develop. Otherwise, the technology is developed, but it has no, you cannot use the technology.
That's right. The debate that I would like to keep is that
Thank you. Thanks.
The law and the rule and regulation is actually for the patient's safety. So what if the patient is not able to have ownership of the data, his own data, and still he's not able to have an ownership? It's the responsibility of the health system to devise a guideline or a framework that it's a patient data is secure. We are not asking about to just like that give away the data. You know, the patient has the ownership who the data has to be utilized. Okay, for example, I've seen like many cases that patient data is being utilized for a clinical trial without his knowledge. You know, that is where I'm trying to address it here. So any data from the health from the patient that is generated, it belongs to the patient, and the government have to provide him a security framework that he's relied with the data. That's it.
Please note that the patient is not always in the state of mind to decide about his own data.
No, definitely that is true. But what I'm saying is that what if the patient is traveling? No, see, everything has a pros and cons. Okay, it doesn't mean that. But what I exactly needed is that what if the patient is being migrated to some other state and he needs to have the data right there. So that's where the concept here. So we are not talking about the entire data has to belong to the patient. What I mean is that the ownership has to be with the patient. It's not with the health system. So that's the debate here we are trying to keep. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. Yeah. Have a nice day. And we go, any further comment? Excuse me.
Excuse me. Ownership of data. If I treat a patient, it's Vertrag is a contract. It's a contract between the doctor and the patient. So the data belongs to the patient. That's okay, but it belongs also to me and to my hospital for two reasons.
Because we can't hear you. A bit
yeah, for two reasons. First, we are on duty to store the data for about 30 years for legal reasons. And second, we have to learn from the patient. And so we must calculate about many patients and see how we treat. Do we treat good? So we must analyze these data. So the data can belong to the patient, that's clear, but also it belongs to the hospital and to the doctors.
Thank you. Yeah. If there's no other comment, I go to Klaus-Johann Bruch. It's your part. Oh, your part, sorry. Okay, thanks.
At our table, we had a similar discussion about where should the patient data be stored. Yeah. You know, we think the trend is going to be there will be a central data repository of the patient data. And while every hospital who does an X-ray, they keep the ownership of the data, but the patient will get a digital copy for his personal health record, and he can decide who he is willing to change that information with. And he can also use the data from his medical and mobile devices, for example, his blood sugar or his blood pressure or whatever. He can decide to store all of these data in his central repository. So what we need in order for that to work is more international standards. There is no use in one country defining their own standards. We need international standards. Regarding the question, what are successful projects? We listed, for example, teleradiology. The DICOM is a very good example of a working international standard. Also, stroke networks in teleradiology are very successful. And we also see more and more tumor boards using video conferencing. This enables a better and smarter use of scarce medical resources. We know we have already a lack of specialists, but information technology can help us make this expertise available to every patient, no matter where he's located. Also, what the group felt is necessary and beneficial is the installation of chief digital officers in hospitals. One person at the director's level who is responsible for making the best use of all these new emerging technologies. Yes, that's it from our group. Thank you.
Any comment? Sorry, any comments on what was said by Mr. Juffenbruch? You? No. Oh. No, it's fine. If it's a comment.
Oh, thanks for bringing up this DICOM. You know, that's one of the best examples that I could say. You know, everywhere DICOM is common. Even the HL7 does not have that much of adoption because it's still the V2.7 control specialist in one side of it, and right now we have a CDA version 3, and right now we have Fire. But still, there's no most of the health ID companies are still with the proprietary standards for the data exchange. That's actually the lack of. It's just results in the lack of data exchange. But DICOM is the one standard in healthcare that's predominantly been accepted from North America to Australia to India to Sri Lanka, everywhere. All the modalities are becoming a DICOM thing. So I think the health system has to follow the same strategy. You know, they need to have this kind of thing because the DICOM is driven by the OEMs. You know, initially because I worked with G Healthcare and CareStream Health, and we used to implement a third-party DICOM converter in the past. But right now, every systems are coming up with the DICOM on their own. The exact data that comes out of the modalities are DICOM. So that provides a more force, you know, potential for the health system to adopt this kind of technology. So that's the way. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further comment? Any further comment? No? Okay. Then we take over to Imek. You've got your, okay.
Thank you. So at table 4, we quite had a same opinion or view like table 1 and 2. So we discussed 2 main issues. We see one issue in interoperability. We had quite a German view on this topic and discussed about the German view on this, so which means we are working, it's like the airport in Berlin, since a few years we are working on telematic infrastructure, which should break these silos in a technological way and try to centralize data and centralize the view on data to get a 360 view on the patient. So that's quite one of the main issues we saw for as an answer on question 1. If we solve this problem, which means to break silos, which means surely to solve the ownership of data. I don't want to have another data security discussion here, but we have to solve this problem. That means that the government also have to push it in the right direction, and we have to be able to consolidate the data. If we have to solve this kind of problem, then the second issue comes. We talked a lot about user centricity, and the systems we have, the platforms we have today are quite provider-centric. So we have to switch to user centricity, which means that not only the patient, but also the users as nurses, for example, or healthcare professionals in general, has to love to use the platform. The user interface and the user experience has to be user compliant. And if we solve these 2 problems, we are able to go a step further, which would mean, so we had a view on how are the approaches today and how should they be, or how will they be in 5 years. Today we have a lot of good solutions, like you mentioned, DICOM on another level, but if we have a view on programs which are based in regions, we talked about the university in Mississippi. In Germany, we have, for example, the das gesunde Kinzigtal, which means we have solutions programs which work in a regional area, but we are not able to scale it. We are not able to internationalize this kind of solutions, which means time, place, age, disease, cultural background shouldn't be a topic for this kind of solutions. We have to focus on the human and have solutions within the health or wellness area which address kind of solutions which doesn't depend on different criteria, like I mentioned, like disease, for example. We have ECG solutions why shouldn't they be combined with different blood sugar solutions, for example? If we have a look on the technology base, also in a clinic, for example, we have a clinical site. The departments are in diseases. We have different diseases in clinics. In the clinics, within the departments, we have different silos capturing data, but on a site level, we don't have any connectivity. How should we get the connectivity on a global area? So we have to solve the connectivity at the end on this level to be able to scale solutions on a global way. To be able to do this, and that will sum up our discussion, we have to collaborate. So we talked about, Jonathan just mentioned, we have vendors, we have healthcare professionals, we have the government, we have insurances, and all the different stakeholders within the market on a local but also on a global way have to collaborate to solve this kind of solutions. I agree. There should be a kind of CDO in companies, but that's not the solution at the end. There has to be a cultural change, there has to be a structural change which has to be organized, and it has to be organized not again on a company level just to implement a new organizational structure with a CDO, but it has to be solved on a meta base, on a global base, which could be pushed by a government, but not that much maybe.
Thank you, Imek. There are any comments on the statement of table 4? Anybody who wants to add something on, correct something or whatever? It looks like it was really great. Thank you. Okay, thanks a lot. So we come to table 5 and Kurt Becker.
Thank you. Okay, we started with the main question about the potentials of care delivery in the future and the patient engagement. So that was a key question, and the discussion in the 3 groups went then to first to look at the solutions, what was going on there. There was from Japan the part that the robotic solutions are not addressed in the talk, so we added it here. And next time was that then we focused on telehealth and the doctor and doctor to patient communication via iPhone for better care delivery. And the main question was the definition of telehealth is constantly changing. We don't have we don't have a clear definition of telehealth. It changes over time, and in the moment there's a hesitation on wearable technologies. Not everyone is glad about delivering data in some clouds, health clouds. But we saw a big chance in the later discussions that the technology will help to develop a patient-centered healthcare, where today the doctors make better decisions on the data, but in the future more data analytics will go to the internet, to the AI systems, artificial intelligence, where we then give more focus to the patient engagement, patient empowerment. So both patients and doctors will ask the cloud in the future about knowledge. Yes, so this was and then the main question. So I come to an end. You can get some questions later on. Who will act on data? That's the main question, which covers all these discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kurt. Any comments or questions or add-ons to what was said by Kurt Becker?
Well, I'll do a kind of a summary at the end of it, but I'm still I'm stuck on that question of who, because this point came up in multiple tables, right? Let's keep interoperability and all of that aside. There is going to be a lot of data generated, and I think there's consensus that maybe break the silos, send it up into the cloud, and the patient owns the data. He can decide who will get access to it. No doubt, security, blockchain, all of that. What can he do on that data? So you have patient portals, he can input data from wearable technologies, from scans, doctor's notes, fitness trackers, wearable technologies. Some of it is non-clinical. It has to be clean, segregated data, right? But it's very dangerous to allow him to act on it. And this is, I don't think we came to an agreement, but I'd like to open this up to the forum. Everybody talks about patient-centric. He owns it. He can allow somebody to access it. And in the perfect world, a German citizen goes to America, can access his data from the cloud, maybe provide a physician over there access to the data. In an ideal scenario in the future, that might be possible. But what more can the patient do with that data?
Yes, perhaps I can add a little bit. We think of a digital avatar for a complex patient model based on genomic data, epigenetic data, and variable vital parameters, which are mixed together to an explanation component of the system, so that we see a personal view on the health state, and the health state will change over time, so we can predict some possible things. And we have the possibility to change nutrition, to change movements and something like this to provide a better health status. So we use the data to predict something.
Correct. So again, I'm just challenging everyone here. Watson may use that data and do some number crunching and throw out outputs. He can change his diet, the patient can change his diet, but can he make serious health decisions on his own, the patient? Maybe Watson will throw back some ideas that you have stage 4, whatever the disease. But you see, is it still going to be the clinician who has to make the final decision?
Okay.
The patient can change his diet, exercise, he can switch his doctor, switch his hospital.
We have the problem, and I normally go to the automotive industry to get another focus in the healthcare system. So if we have a car, it's a complex technical device, we drive it, we have a navigation system on the car, and we, as a non-expert, we can use this car to go everywhere. And if there's something wrong with our car, we go to the specialist, and he tells us I should change the engine, something like this, and it costs like this, and so we can decide to change something on our car. And I see the same thing in healthcare system. So we have the time to look at our healthcare, at our health system, personal health system, and the specialist has to make the decisions which are more severe, you know?
I think it's a very, very interesting question you asked. So, do we really need physicians in the future, in a way, you know, or do we have algorithms who prepare the decision for a patient? Yeah? Well, I stayed yesterday in a different round on a high-tech summary, and there are a lot of people working on how to clarify data that you can be able only working with algorithms, for example. Yeah? So the direction, I think, is going that way. It won't be like this during the next 15, 20 years, I don't know. But I think definitely we have to ask things like this as well. Klaus,
regarding your question, what can the patient do with his data? You know, I think in the near future, we will have systems like the tricorder that you mentioned in your presentation, which on a small level, the patient will get advice from an artificial intelligence on what to make of the data he recorded. And at the same time, the physician in the future will have to rely on artificial intelligence, because in a couple of years, these systems will be so advanced that no doctor, or he will at least use one of those systems as a second opinion. And I think there might come a day where the doctor will not make a decision without that system because he knows that that system is more capable of diagnosing an X-ray or whatever than he is even as an experienced physician.
And you even have this kind of personal color. Let's put it that way. The study they did is that it was on economy, yeah, and different people decide different on the same kind of data. So because your attitude is like open or it's closed or it's like angry or whatever, or you would like to, in a way, push your numbers in a certain way. So that is one of the other points to say get like more a neutral decision. Yeah, actually you will need all this kind of algorithms behind who help you to find the right decision for the right person. Sorry.
So I've got 2 points. First of all, it's the amount of data you're getting in. So there's got to be some type of data governance and around also the quality of data. So clinicians involved in collecting data and how they govern the governance around that data. And the second point is around so the data going out and the machine learning and how the hierarchy of clinical decision making. So if something needs to be flagged, to have a clinician involved at some stage of the patients to look at the outcomes, or also the hierarchy or the classification of that data. So if it's low level and you can build in outcomes for the patient that they have clinical decision support, or whether then a clinician gets involved at the last stage of it as well. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further comment on the discussion, on the questions, on the comments?
On your I'll just go here. On the comment on what's if it's healthy or not healthy that the patient has ownership of the data, I think it is very healthy because I mean everybody has heard of the term of Dr. Google, no? I mean when you feel something bad or when you have something and you don't know what it is, the first I mean at least myself, I do this type of thing. I go to Google and I say I feel dizzy. What do I have? I mean and patients do want to know what the response of what I feel and what do I have, and instead of just using search engine, if you own the data and you actually can identify what are the exact symptoms and not just put a vague word of dizziness and input it into a health portal that's going to actually give you a responsible recommendation based on not of what you describe your symptom, but the actual symptom that you're presenting within your body, is going to help you to definitely engage and address your health on a more effective way. I think it's important.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you. You're really right. So, may I ask Sid to summarize our session?
Sure. So I think it was pretty interesting the last hour or so. I got the chance to spend time in at least 3 of the tables. The one thing that I think the one thing that came out, there was an initial question about telehealth, connectivity, and interoperability of health systems. So there was a kind of view that there's already a lot of data being generated from image lab, point of care devices, various scanners, and you could do much more with the data that is being generated. So if in case of a priority, there was a view that do we need to connect more devices? Is that the most important thing? Or do we need to do more with the data that already exists? So that, that was one interesting feedback that came about. There was also this question about breaking the silos and eventually taking all that data into a cloud environment. Saw that in three groups, breaking the silos from that perspective. Another interesting one was the user interface. So we talk about patient engagement, we talk about, so you have things like Facebook and things like that. And you have user interface both from the clinician standpoint and the patient standpoint as well. And there's a perception that a lot more work could be done to make it easier for the clinician to access, use, or for the patient to use and access, under this whole, in this whole connected ecosystem. Apparently, someone who was sitting at our table said it's seen that it's easier to log into Facebook and comment and do things from a usability standpoint than a lot of healthcare applications from a connectivity standpoint. So perhaps a lot can be done from that perspective. And finally, there's this big question which I don't think we got an answer to, but maybe our 19th mega trend should be the role of the future doctor. I personally don't think he's going to go away. I think clinical decision support will be helped better, more accurate at solving other issues. I don't think a machine can sign off on a path of care. You mentioned low-level decisions versus high-level complex decisions. I personally don't think the doctor is going to go away anytime soon. He's going to get more information to make those decisions. Maybe some very basic things. Yeah, it's easy to say you need more exercise, you need to reduce your salt intake. That's fine, but real clinical decisions will still be up to a doctor. But I think we still have quite a lot of open questions, and we'd like to keep the discussion ongoing. So those who want to stick with the discussion, we've got your details. If anybody wants some kind of a summary, we can arrange to send back to folks our viewpoints, and we'd love to keep the discussion ongoing over the next few days and weeks as well. It's an interesting topic.
Thank you, Sid. I think, yeah, if you leave your contacts, we could even make photos from all the essentials and send it around, and we will put all this point together and send like a summary. That could be definitely possible. Okay. At that point, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for staying with us and discussing with us. We are having a break now, about 10 minutes, I think. And then we will have the keynote on Internet of Medical Things. And because we started a bit later, we had this technical problem in the beginning, we don't get a second round on a Worldcafe. But the idea is, and the other point was that a few of the medical, Internet of Medical Things points were discussed already, I heard. So we will have definitely the speech, and probably have a round together to discuss it. I think we are warm now, so we don't have to discuss it in an open round, in a bigger round. And after that, we will have a presentation from Forecast, which is a partner of Frost & Sullivan, who's going to present their innovative solutions. But we will have about 10 minutes break just to clean up the table and so on. Then we have the keynote on the Internet of Medical Things, an open round, and I hope to see you all again here. Thanks a lot. And for me, it was really great. I recognized that we had each table at least had one woman. And I think it's really great, because I'm not used to have women in my usual. Normally I have this kind of like over there, five people in front, everybody's talking. And I said, we really have to change this. Yeah? There's such a lot of potential with the people staying with us, and we really have to work that out. And I'm really, you are my heroes, because you really did it, and it's really great. And I hope you're coming back, and I hope we will see you again next year again. Thanks a lot to all of you.
All right, so Internet of Medical Things, and you know what my objective right now here is to talk about the different application areas. I'm looking at this only from the application areas. Dinesh has done a fantastic job of explaining everything to you from the connectivity side, the technical side of things. Where do these applications actually fall in, right? So if Right. So why are we even talking about Internet of Medical Things? And there's quite a few things we've already discussed in our first Worldcafe, the first session. But essentially, it'll help you. IOMT is the technology that'll help you sort of solve your current care delivery challenges. Right. Right now, we know that care is a very disjointed model right now, care delivery. You have one person is a doctor, you go to your family physician, you go to a specialist, and you go to probably some other doctor as well, and none of them know each other, none of them know what is being prescribed to you. There's nothing that's actually known. But IMT can help in having sort of coordinated care approach, so everyone's connected, so everyone's on the same platform, and the patient gets better care eventually. Instead of having discrete care interactions, we spoke about anytime care, anywhere care, but more importantly, continuous care. So all the time, continuously, the patient is being monitored and care is being provided to them whenever it may be possible. It's not location dependent, it's location agnostic. The person doesn't have to be in one particular place. I think Nathan just left, but he was also talking about that right now, where we are talking about how can you make it anywhere possible. It can be the car, you're traveling to work, you're going to work right now, you're in your office, you're at a trade show here. How can you actually have care being provided to you wherever you are? Also important is, there are several advantages of using IOMT for care delivery, right? So instead of having a unidirectional flow, where right now you go to the doctor diagnoses you, gives you some prescription, you take the medicines, and that's it. That ends right there. But can we have bidirectional or multidirectional flow, constant flow of information between the patient and the doctor? For example, you are having a particular wearable device on you right now that's monitoring your heart rate. Something goes wrong that is already being sent to your doctor. The doctor is already aware of that. They call you immediately and say, okay, you need to take this particular medicine right away, or you need to come in right now. So that is the kind of approach that can be enabled by Internet of Medical Things. Most importantly, right now we talk about personalized medicine. It's no longer generalized medicine. Can we have medicine or care that is being tailored to yourself, to your individual person? So it is very much tailored to what your health conditions are in the past, and all of that information, all of your past medical history is actually taken into consideration, and then the care that you receive is tailored to yourself. And finally, what we've been discussing in the last round probably is about the reactive versus proactive care approach. Instead of having something, you go to the doctor after you actually have a disease, can it be prevented? Can it be proactive, where you are actually told about it before you develop a disease or that condition gets worse, so that you're treated, there's medical intervention before that condition worsens, and it prevents escalation of costs, it prevents deterioration of your health conditions, and overall it's in a win-win situation. Okay, let's skip that. This is our view of the ecosystem of Internet of Medical Things. So essentially, if you look at it from the application perspective, where is the Internet of Medical Thing application being provided? We segment it into 5 specific areas. Very first, on body, you have wearable devices, clinical grade as well as consumer grade. So that includes your Fitbits, but also something like a medical grade device that can take your ECG. That's on the body. The second one is in home. Right now you're talking about smart homes. Can we enable smart homes to actually also track your health and connect that to your doctor's office, so that everything you do in the home is actually connected to your doctor's office and your health is being monitored all the time? In the community, so out there in the public spaces, if you're talking about smart cities, are smart cities enabled in a way that they can provide healthcare, they can monitor you, and whenever required, if there's an emergency, you can be helped out immediately because you are in the public space, which is also connected. In the clinic and then in the hospital. So in the clinic is where you would define it by obviously the physician practices. It could be a single physician practice, it could be multi-physician practice. But can you provide some sort of devices which are handheld, which can provide instantaneous diagnostic results right there in the clinic instead of waiting for a pathological test report to come in later? And finally, in the hospital, it's a much larger segment, but essentially the concept of a smart hospital. Can you have connected devices throughout your hospital that all of them together generate insights which are really smart, intelligent in a way that help you, or rather help the hospital to provide better care to their patients, and probably even beyond the hospital walls. So the concepts of remote patient monitoring even after a patient is discharged from the hospital. All of this, and some of this we've covered again in the first Worldcafe, but right at the bottom you can see all of this data that is being generated, and that's the question that keeps coming up again. There's a lot of tons of data that's going to be generated, but ultimately you need you need to have storage systems for that, You need to have systems that can analyze that information, analytics. You need to probably also have machine learning to make sense of their data, and also cybersecurity obviously is very important. And then you have interoperability as well as decision support systems. All of these sort of layers need to go up on top of these on the data that is generated to actually make sense out of it in a secure way, and that can be actually helpful for the entire ecosystem. I'm going to take one segment at a time. If you look at the on-body segment right now, this is if you look at the wearable space, it's quite interesting that we can do so much right now with existing wearable devices. Now, it's critical to sort of talk about the distinction between the regular consumer-grade wearables like your Fitbits, but this, what is you see up here, is more on the clinical side, the actual clinical-grade wearables. If you look at the legend down here, next to the human body on the bottom, it says there are three sort of categories, and the very first one is the critical high value, and I think the color combinations are a little off here. But essentially, the very important one, the critical high value ones, could be stuff like ECG or EKG. They're really important to sort of keep track of. You also have the nice to have versions, like for example, sleep monitors, fall detection, SpO2, blood pH, blood temperature, body temperature. And the general wellness category is where you're talking about your regular consumer-grade wearables, such as your Fitbits, which can track your calories, your pedometer, and all of those categories would be in the general wellness category. Of course, the major therapeutic focus, that tends to be with the current wearable devices. You have heart and cardio monitors, diabetes, obesity, respiratory and COPD, and also chronic pain management. These are the 4 sort of major therapeutic areas that most wearables currently are focusing on. Coming to the in-home segment, it's quite interesting to see that you have solutions that are available for the entire age spectrum inside the house. So you begin with, for example, this little girl on the right-hand side. She's having a flu and she doesn't even have to step outside the house. Her mother can probably just take her temperature, enable that with a telemedicine service, and that information is relayed on to the doctor, who can just diagnose her with a basic flu, and also maybe provide the prescription. And quite possibly that prescription can be home delivered by Amazon in the future, maybe. But that is also possible, that without stepping outside the home, you can get care delivery. The second consideration is for a person who's just probably undergone surgery. So remote monitoring while the patient is at home, post-discharge, you can monitor the patient for all of their symptoms, and just keep track of their recovery process. So they are very well taken care of, and hospital readmissions are probably avoided. The next sort of a very general example could be on sleep, tracking sleep and wellness. Can sleep be tracked at the home itself in an everyday environment? Because sleep is equally important these days. Any sleep tracking wearable will tell you there's a whole bunch of statistics as to sleep affecting health as well. So sleep tracking is another example. If you look at the next one, medication adherence, one of the biggest challenges that most health systems across the world have. You can give the prescription to the patients, but are those patients taking those medicines for the recommended dosage, the recommended times, and for the recommended duration? If they don't do that, and for n number of reasons, one, because they are afraid of side effects, 2, because they don't want to, they probably forget about it, or 3, they've just forgotten their medicines at home and they've gone somewhere else. So can there be some systems that can enable them to remember or to remind them that they need to take particular medications? Mental health patients is another example where you could actually keep track of their mental health conditions. You can have some ECG or EEG sort of tracking neurostimulation devices that can help the mental health conditions of patients. Finally, in the case of elderly, we constantly talk about the aging population right now. So there's a whole bunch of solutions that are available for the aging in place category. You have people who want to independently age; they don't want to be in a nursing home or an assisted living facility. So for them, ensuring their safety remotely so that they can graciously just age independently, but at the same time somebody is monitoring their well-being overall, be it fall detection, be it medication adherence, be it just that they are all right and they're following their daily routine. And finally, for the entire family, you could have the several devices that are actually tracking their everyday vitals, be it blood pressure, weight, temperature, thermometer, blood, any other wellness vitals that are required for them. And all of this can be possible for an in-home category. The community. Now, this is a little futuristic, and I like to talk about this in a it's a future smart city sort of a concept. But there are several ways that you can look at it. For example, the very first one example on the left-hand side at the bottom is the kiosks. So can, for example, a smart city have a kiosk at various areas, maybe a grocery store, maybe a supermarket, where patients can actually get informational services on maybe health conditions. Maybe then they could also access telemedicine services, provided that their insurance actually covers for that. Or they could probably even have kiosk which dispenses over-the-counter medication, or maybe even with a prescription drugs. So that is actually a possibility, just like an ATM kiosk. The second one is logistics, and when we refer to logistics, we are talking about all of these perishable healthcare products. It could be medicines, it could be vaccines, it could be biotech products. But for all of those, there's a supply chain angle to it for the manufacturers of these products, where they can track all of these products end to end from the point of distribution to the point of actual consumption. You could actually, one of the bigger problems that is available, that's a problem in the pharmaceutical space, is fraud. So you have diversions of opioids, or you even have fake medicines coming into the supply chain. So can that be avoided by IOMT's technologies? Can you also have temperature control logistics that prevents the deterioration of vaccines, where you try to have a cold chain supply chain? So that needs to be maintained. IOMT sensors can enable monitoring of the temperature throughout. One of the things that Jonathan was talking about a while back, and that's about mobility. So most of the major car manufacturers, and most of them I mean like all of your major car manufacturers, including BMW, Nissan, Mercedes, Chrysler, Daimler, all of them today are already researching or already implementing the use of sensors in the car. So you can have a sensor in the seat belt that tracks your heart rate. It can track your, there are sensors that can track your drowsiness based on your eye movements. Maybe the sweat on your hands can be used for detecting your alcohol content. Of course, the automobile industry is looking at this from a safety perspective, for the car safety. But it could also be applied for a healthcare perspective, where all of the vitals that are being tracked can actually be implemented for healthcare reasons, for monitoring. The point of care is essentially another interesting segment where you could have employee clinics, employee worksite clinics, where these could be employed. A simple tricorder-like device that was spoken of earlier in the previous discussion. It could be used for a quick diagnosis of at least some basic ailments. That could enable even not necessarily a specialist doctor, but even a basic doctor to sort of diagnose these ailments and then probably refer them on to specialists as required. And finally, emergency response intelligence. This is what I was talking about earlier about in the smart city concept. So for example, can you have the ambulances equipped with technologies that can allow them to communicate the patient's vitals and also their overall conditions through maybe a Google Glass, maybe some other monitoring devices that can all be transmitted back to the hospital, where an emergency physician who's waiting for the patient is already aware of all of the patient's conditions and probably can help them better and faster. Another interesting example for a community emergency services is the drones. Now, there are a bunch of drones, and we talk a lot about drone technology. Right now, it's more prevalent in countries like Africa, but also probably in the US and in Germany as well, where remote areas are actually being serviced by drones for dropping off pharmaceutical products, drugs which are in low supply. But can you also have drones that are carrying maybe an emergency defibrillator that can just go towards the patient, that can reach the accident site faster than maybe even an ambulance? So that is another exciting example. Finally, in the clinic. Now, in the clinic, you have two sides to this. Right? There are products and services for the doctor side, and there are products and services for the patient side. On the doctor side, there are several tools that can improve the productivity and efficiency of the doctor. And these can include, for example, medical devices, which are sort of digitized or capable to communicate with other products. For example, how about a digital stethoscope that can also record heart waves and transmit it onto a smartphone app where you could analyze that immediately instead of relying only on your ears. Pathology support. Can the doctor actually make use of a point-of-care diagnostic device that can enable them to quickly get a path lab support, any diagnosis of a disease at the point of care immediately, instead of waiting for the result to come in after 2 days or 2 weeks, so that they can then immediately begin the treatment for that particular patient? And finally, specialist support. For example, this is a primary care physician who needs to actually consult with a specialist doctor. They could use probably a Google Glass, get connected with another specialist doctor, and get a consult immediately about what they think about that particular patient. On the patient side, again, there's a bunch of topics again. It's a diagnosis, it's remote monitoring and therapy. In diagnosis, we're talking about in the clinic, telemedicine and point of care, right? So in the clinic itself, can the patients avail of these services where they can get instant diagnosis, what we spoke about earlier on the doctor side, but at the same time, those services can be availed of even at their home. So are there tools available that enable doctors to connect to the patient home, and there they can get their treatment? So there are devices available right now that can allow you to take your vitals, your temperature, connected otoscopes, or all of these kinds of devices that a doctor can actually be connected to, get the data from, and while the patient is at home, and help them diagnose their ailments. And remote monitoring is, again, for chronic care conditions especially, where a patient does not necessarily have to visit the doctor every week or every 2 weeks, or maybe even every 2 days. They can just take their vitals, get the data uploaded to the clinic's cloud platform maybe, and get all of that information, and the doctor can then help them navigate their own care pathway. And finally, the therapy section. Now, there are some tools that are available even right now that can enable the therapy angle of doctor support. For example, and I wouldn't necessarily call this doctor, but physiotherapists have tools available where there are therapy devices that can be used for the patient to be used, and all of the data from the therapy devices actually feeds into the doctor's portal, and the doctor can keep track of the patient progress in their recovery. And finally, in the hospital, now this is a very large segment. It's a very the smart hospital concept in a way. But essentially, we were divided into sort of 3 areas. One would be the administrations, one would be the clinical operations, and finally, the last one would be patient experience or patient centricity that we keep talking about. But if you look at the hospital administration perspective, there are several different things that can be done. Different kinds of asset management for all of your mobile assets. You could have personal management, managing the people flow through the hospital, managing of your inventory, smart communication tools between different care providers, the hospitals, the nurses, the doctors, and also on the clinical side, you would have different clinical devices that enable continuous clinical monitoring. Instead of a nurse coming in and taking patient vitals every 4 hours, what if there is a device that can do that job continuously and enable also continuous collection of data that can be fed into maybe an algorithm that can also provide you an early warning score instead of having a code blue event maybe after 2 hours. You could prevent that 2 hours in advance because there's continuous data coming in and that is being analyzed. On the other hand, you also could have, with the patient experience. Now, patient centricity is something that is being talked about a lot in hospitals, and there are examples of these happening already, where you have, virtual family visits. For example, instead of imagine a small child who's actually, really scared of a hospital environment. Can you enable virtual reality-enabled sort of family visits where they are able to see their own home and their family members at their home through a virtual reality headset to help them sort of calm down and reduce the scary part of being in a hospital? Can you have wayfinding or indoor navigation? Hospitals, as any hospital that you take, is a very complex environment to navigate. The layouts are very difficult to navigate. People don't know their ways around. And generally what ends up happening is people ask for instructions or directions to different people. And if there's proven stats that for every interruption in medical care, there are manual errors that these medical personnel make. So to avoid that, can you have some sort of technology, some sort of an indoor GPS in the hospital to allow people to navigate through the hospital? And then finally, smart room controls. Instead of having, we can have the smart room, which is smart in a way that it allows you to control the lights, it allows you to control the ventilation, the temperature, maybe even draw the blinds using just a few clicks of a button, or maybe on a smartphone app, or maybe even using voice technology on an Alexa integrated device. So that is actually the 5 segments of applications that we are talking about. And this is a summary slide of the different application segments ultimately, and I think that's where I'll stop. And if there are any questions, we can take that. Christina, would you like to take the next session? We can have the No, I don't have this.
I think I think we can't. It's difficult to have a round to discuss it because we actually should present your partners from Forecare.
Yeah. We should.
Yeah. So I think we will have a presentation on Forecare now, and if you want to discuss a topic, I think we will have a part after the presentation of Forecare. Very well, welcome to Forecare.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maarten Vesten. I'm a solution consultant, and I work with Forecare. And I'm going to take you today through a journey, a little patient journey, and speak with you about what Forecare can do and our vision of the world in healthcare. So basically, our company is about bringing people and information together, medical information to be more precise. Next. If you're a clinician or if you've worked with patients, you probably recognize this. The information about the patient is everywhere, but not at the point of care where you need it, where you actually need it. So that's an issue. You have the information, all the medical devices have put their information in some sort of repository somewhere, but you cannot get to that information. But you do need it for making good clinical decisions. And you do need it to make the right decisions in a short amount of time. And in a multidisciplinary team meeting to make the right choices. And if you're at the operating table, it enables you to act as a team. And when it comes to medication, you want to know what the patient is using so you can make sure that there are no adverse interactions of the medication that you're prescribing. And also, in a face-to-face talk with the patient, you want to have all the information and everything that everybody did with that patient to make sure that you have a good consultation with the patient and that the patient understands its condition, his or her condition. And then the question is how? Because in this day and age, we do have all the technology available to actually make this happen. But it's somehow still not happening, and it hasn't been happening for decades even, because we've been talking about this for decades already. So how do we achieve this? Well, first of all, it starts with all the information in disparate repositories to be sort of grouped together and made available as one virtual repository. So it's okay if data stays at the source, but you need to have, as a clinician or as a healthcare professional, you need to have access to all the information that is relevant and that you're allowed to actually access. So that is one thing. Interoperability is a key term here. Making everything, all those technical systems with all those data, small data repositories, maybe large data repositories like PAC systems, make them interoperable. It's a difficult word, interoperability, but this is what needs to be done. And how can you do that? Well, there is an initiative, a worldwide initiative of vendors and users, and that initiative is called Integrating the Healthcare Enterprise, or IHE. It's both an organization, it's a testing platform, and it's a set of, documentation that describes how you can achieve this. And what you see in this diagram, is there a laser pointer here? Yeah. So there's sort of a catalog in the center here that catalogs all the information that is available in the network. So that could be anything. That could be lab results. It could be histological data. It could be reports. It could be images. It could be virtually anything. So if you can achieve this, and have the physician that actually needs the data, or the healthcare professional that actually needs the data, be able to access that repository or that registry and get access to that data, you can have all the data that you want and that you need. And then then you have the information, but there's another step that you would like to take. Oh, I forgot this. It would be neat, of course, if you could just do nothing, stay at the EMR system you already use and have that information available there. But the other step that you need is the process that actually requires the information to be exchanged. For instance, a referral for a cancer treatment, to have that automated in some or aided in some kind of way, and that is where referral management comes in. So referral management is about actually the orders and the referrals and the multidisciplinary team meeting requests to be also transported across a network that integrates with the information sharing. Oh, that was the wrong button. To integrate with the information sharing. So besides actually sharing information, you also share the work orders and have status available 24/7. And that would eliminate the need for faxes and phone calls to know about the status of your patient referral or your multidisciplinary team meeting. So if you have that, if you have both the information sharing covered and you have the referral management in place, then you have people and information working seamlessly, and you have enabled the healthcare professionals to actually empower the patient if they have a say in this. And how do you achieve that? Okay, this is where we come in, ForCare, our company. A little bit about our company. We're established in 2006. We're a Dutch company, so we're based in Zeist. We've opened offices in Toronto, Canada. We expanded into the USA, and we have an office here in Germany as well, and in England, in the UK, I must say. We're over 80 people, and we serve over 60 million medical records annually in our systems. So our core purpose in this world is to improve healthcare by delivering smart solutions that achieve what you just saw, using open standards. So IHE, the integrating the healthcare enterprise, is open standards. You can pick them up the internet and just read them. It involves professionals, so they are involved in this process, and it empowers patients, and it's all about interoperability. A bit about our core values. What does ForCare stand for? We don't compromise on quality. We think, we prepare, and we deliver, and we act on the basis of trust and integrity, and we take challenges as a team. So this gives you an impression of how we work as ForCare. What are these smart solutions that ForCare deliver? And this is a peek into the future, because currently, if you want to achieve interoperability, if you've ever been doing something with interoperability, you know that connecting systems and make them interoperable, make them work together, it's labor intensive. And the solutions you may come up with are brittle. Just one update to one system and the entire setup breaks. It's complex. You need actually a department full of engineers to make it work. There are security concerns. You, of course, want to make sure that the data doesn't leak outside. You want to make sure that you involve the patient. Does the patient want his data across everywhere? So security concerns. And it's more often than not, considered as a cost factor. Our vision is that we turn this around and that we make it from labor intensive into more automated deployment by learning from what we've done before. Make it self-repairing. So if there's updates in one place, the interoperable solutions will self-repair. There's security by design, and it should actually be an earning model. So it should be an incentive to actually make systems interoperable as opposed to a cost factor. So this is where we want to go. Using, and I'm taking some giant leaps here, using IHE to make systems interoperable, that is already happening over the world. It's not for nothing that we have so many offices around the world already. And so truly getting all the data of all patients, whether they're moving, whether they're traveling to Germany to join Medica, or whether they stay at home. If you have all their data available, you can make quick decisions should it be necessary. So if there are already health information exchanges established, our vision is that we can join them up in a smart interoperability cloud and make it so for the users or the decision makers that they can just cross, okay, we want to work with hospital B or healthcare provider C, and we don't need to work with another healthcare provider. It should be that easy. It shouldn't be complex. So this is where we want to go, and this is where our products are going. And how does this relate to the Internet of Medical Things? In a previous session, there was something about should we use the data that we already have better, or should we actually connect more data sources? Well, the latter is happening. We will not be able to stop that. So we take that as a given. There will be more devices connected to repositories. That is going to happen. So we need to sort of make sure that we make that data available and sensible and include that in a medical process. And this is where Internet of Medical Things comes in. And if you look to the IHE specifications, you might think there's so much involved. I've heard about cross-enterprise document sharing, XDS, but if I want to do XDS, I also have to do all kinds of other 4-letter and 3-letter abbreviations, and there's a lot of knowledge involved. So you need that if you want to exchange the data, but it's like a truck to haul the data from A to B. And if you are only licensed to drive a car, you will never master the truck. But no problem here, because this is where we come in, where we see ourselves as a platform to make sure that that exchange of data, even small little things or personal health records or large hospital EMR systems, we want to put that, disclose that using a platform through connectors on the one side, and disclose that for application developers on the other side. So a platform that sort of does the heavy lifting for you of the interoperability, and then enable application developers to create innovative user interfaces or a different way of looking at information. And that is what we would like to leave to the app developers. So as I said, IHE and 4K products can do the heavy lifting, and then you get the simple API to actually develop comprehensive applications. So that was it. Any questions?
Thanks a lot. Thank you. We are running out of time, so we will have questions beside our green stage, if that is possible. You're still here, I think.
I will.
Okay. Well, after discussing the future and having a presentation on what will be possible in about 10 years, we are back in reality. We are back to platform and standardization and all the hurdles we have to overcome to really be successful. Well, thanks a lot to all of you, especially all the people who stayed in the Worldcafe. It was really a great experience working with you. And I hope we will see you again next year for the Worldcafe. And I wish all of you a very good day and a very nice fair to the next days, I think even 3 days, and a good way back. Thank you.